heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfsbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we're taking a look at the NECA Universal Monsters Wolfman figure. And I feel bad for taking so long to get around to shooting this review. I had ambitious plans for what I was going to do, and I just kind of kept running out of time and focus and all that fun crap to actually do things the way I had initially intended. I had a whole diorama plan set up for this. So instead, we're just going with this kind of thrown together mad scientist lab background, and we're going to talk about this thing because I also wanted to get it done before I got the new Mummy accessory set and all the new releases coming supposedly in the next few months. So just trying to kind of clear this one off the plate. It's the third time I've reviewed a Wolfman figure in this scale. The previous two were the Diamond Select, Universal Select entries. So this is like the other Universal monsters that NECA's done so far. Nothing new necessarily, but Wolfman was one of my favorite characters as a kid, and I definitely wanted to check this guy out. So let's not waste too much time and go ahead and take a closer look. Old Larry Talbot here comes with a few different accessories. We have a little stand, we have his cane, and we have his full-on actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf bear trap. The stand isn't anything special. It is just a little round disc with a single peg coming out of the middle and will fit into either of his feet. The cane is really nicely detailed. It has a little, well, they called it a pentagram, like a 5-point star with a wolf jumping through it. You have the full dog head on there, or wolf head. Has a nice silver color to it. It kind of extends down a little bit onto the black main body of the cane, and then a little silver tip down there at the very bottom edge. And the bear trap is my favorite piece out of the whole thing. It's just really nice looking. We got some kind of brushed metal looking details, some rivets on there, really nicely sculpted. Kind of see the hinge rivets there in the very front. This little part in the back, which I assume was just supposed to be the spring. And the part I think is really cool is that it actually has this little kind of hinge mechanism on here, so it actually kind of goes down over the edge of the bear trap, and that all connects with a little linkage to the foot pedal or trigger in the middle. So it's not like you can actually push it and have it spring closed or anything, but it does all kind of look like it matches up, so that if that was undone by the linkage, that if this was spring-loaded, it would be able to go and slam shut. So I like that level of detail, that it actually has some movable and, functioning looking parts, if not actual functioning parts. We'll take a look at all these on the figure here in a minute, but here are all the kind of swappable body parts that we get. So we actually get 2 pairs of feet, both a wolf and human. We have 2 wolf hands, 3 human hands, 1 human face, and then 2 wolfman faces. So we'll start with Lon Chaney Jr. here in his human form. Like I said, we just get the single human head. This came out pretty good. I think it has a really strong likeness to Lon Chaney Jr. Definitely captures that very sad look that he had throughout the movie. Honestly, throughout this and the sequel. It's got kind of messy hair, but kind of still short. It's mostly one color, not a whole lot of variation going on there, but it does look pretty good. Skin coloration looks what I would expect it to. The detail on the face looks just fine. It is kind of a bit glossy, which I think works because I always kind of pictured him being very sweaty throughout this movie. As with the other Universal monsters in this line, he does come with the neck attached to the head. Nothing really crazy going on here, just kind of a plain flesh tone. Both the left and right hand are pretty much the same. They're kind of this weird kind of grasping pose. I think it works kind of as a relaxed look for the character. We have some nice wrinkle detail. Fingernails are detailed out on there. I don't know, I could have seen them maybe trying to do something a little more neutral for the hand shape, but this works okay. We do have the alternate right hand that's kind of a gripping pose, a very tight gripping pose. And that can be used to hold the cane. That works decently, but I think it kind of still leaves a little bit lacking just because of the bottom part of this figure. Because the feet with this one are bare human feet, which is not something you get a whole lot of in action figures like this. It definitely works for, say, the scene of Larry transforming the first time you see him, or I think later on in the movie you see him in the woods, right after turning back, he has bare feet and walking around in the woods or whatever. But it just doesn't match up really with the scenes where he would have the cane. If I remember correctly, it's been a minute since I watched the movie. I probably should have before filming this, but whatever. I believe when he had the cane, he would have been fully dressed and not in this state. Obviously, you're doing photos. You could take photos of him you know, just from the shins up. If the stop motion bit I was working on makes it into this video, I used a part for Jason, which has similar looking pants and then actually has boots. But yeah, I mean, it's a choice that kind of makes sense if you're going to do the swap at that part of the body. I kind of wish they would have included it so you could do the leg swap from the knee down and just given us something more normal for the lower part of this figure that could swap out with these ones with like the cuffs rolled up and the Wolfman feet. But even saying that, I'm a little bit torn when I think about it harder, so maybe I'm wrong there. In wolf form, he has two different heads. I really like how both of them came out. I believe when they showed the initial tease, I had issues with it, but having it in hand, I don't really remember what those issues were. So I don't know if they fixed it or if I'm just misremembering. I want to say the initial prototype had a mustache, and that bugged me. So if that was the case, obviously it's not here. We have the bare upper lip on there. But I think they did a really good job with that face sculpt. He looks properly angry. You have a little underbite sticking out. All the hair coming out around his chin and the sides of his face. His eyes have a nice kind of snarling look to them with the wrinkles underneath. The little poof of hair up at the top of his head, I think, has a decent shape to it. It's also a weird thing. And I was looking back at my review of the original Diamond Select one and complaining about how bad that looked. And it's weird because in theory it doesn't look a whole lot different here, but it does look a whole lot different. You can see his eyes sticking out there. The hair does have a little bit of like shading in it, I think. There's a little bit of a black wash in the brown. Looks really good on a profile as well. And then there's the other side of his head. The neck here is nice and hairy to match with the rest of the head. And I should point out that both of these heads have their own neck piece. They're not sharing the neck, which is nice. And I also like that I mentioned it looks kind of snarling from the front, and even from the profile it looks a bit sinister, but like get a slightly upward angle, it kind of looks a little scared, which I think fits with the character pretty well. So I think they got a lot out of this one head sculpt. And then we have the full-on snarling head sculpt here. The mouth is slightly open, revealing all of his teeth. The details around the sides of the head are pretty similar. The eyes look a little angrier here. They are also looking slightly off to his right. Normally not a huge fan of that with action figures. I'd almost rather always have eyes pointing straight forward and then move the head unless it's for a very specific scene from a film. But since we do have two other heads with this and at least one other werewolf head, I'm not as upset about this. Similarly, we can look at that from the side. From the profile, you can see those lower teeth do stick out a little bit more, which I like. Once again, you can see the neck there with the detail. And there he is from the other side. A little bit of the back. Getting used to this camera still, so it doesn't seem to want to focus on the back as easily, so that's kind of a pain. And then changing the angle here doesn't look a whole lot different. I see a little Jack Nicholson in this. I think he was a werewolf at some point, wasn't he? But I still think it looks really good for the character, and I do like how this came out. And I just knocked over the entire background while trying to move the figure for this next shot, so if everything looks different, that's why. But yeah, he has these kind of grasping hands in the Wolfman form. These are the only hands he comes with. They are nicely detailed. They have the black fingernails, which look a lot better than those big, weird ones on the Diamond Select. The fur texture is nice. The color's a good brown. It's funny because they kind of mirror the shape of the hands in the human form. I don't know if that was intentional or not to make it like easier to make him look like he was transforming or something, but I think these work really well. I don't really see the need for anything too much more than this for this figure. You know, they work for the strangling hands that he has where he's, you know, killing most people by strangling them. They work as kind of feral looking. I think this is a decent set of hands to get with this thing. For the feet, they look like they should. They got the little black nails in the front, the Wolfman kind of weird shape to them. We turn them to the side, you can kind of see how they're bent. I think maybe NECA went a little shallower with these than they were in the movie. He's a lot more kind of on his tiptoes in the film from what I remember, but I think this makes it so he's able to balance a little easier, and I think it still works for display purposes. He does need that stand unless you're really good at balancing him, so I'm glad they included that. But overall, I think they look pretty good for his little Wolfman feet. Obviously, the joint kind of takes up a lot of real estate on there, so that's a little annoying, but for what they are, I think they work well. And that's mostly on the back anyway, where you're going to see a lot of that joint. For the shared parts of this figure, between all the different looks, we do have his shirt. This is standard NECA fare, where it is the soft rubber for the main torso body piece of it. It's got some nice wrinkles, pocket details. Not a whole lot of color variation here. It's mostly just that kind of dark green, but I think there is maybe a little bit of darker shading in there to help bring out some of the details. The back also continues that on, and then you can see it kind of narrows down at the hips, so it looks like it's flaring out over the bottom of his shirt, but if you move him around, you kind of do expose that part that tucks in and hides a little bit. But I still think it looks good. It looks relatively seamless. I'm much happier having this than having, once again, comparing it to that old Diamond Select figure. That's pretty old at this point, so it's not really a fair comparison, but, you know, they gave him like a mid-torso joint that broke up the entire sculpt of the shirt, so I much prefer this, even if you do lack a little articulation. I know there was some controversy when this was revealed, because I believe a lot of people were saying that the shirt should be blue, or maybe a light gray. It seems like Universal has defined color palettes for these characters. And if you want to produce merchandise with the characters, you have to follow their color scheme. So I don't think it was NECA's option as to what color they were going to make the shirt. I think they were basically told it's a green shirt, you're going to make it green. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't really know. I've seen different colorized photos do it different ways. Maybe there's a museum that has the original shirt or something, I'm not sure. But I'm fine with it being green. I'm used to seeing it as green, so I'm not going to complain too much there. The sleeves are pretty much what we're used to. Same kind of wrinkles we'd get on like a Jason or something. Actually, this body shares a lot with Jason in terms of looks. I don't think it matches up exactly. I think the shirt does have different details to it, but it kind of reminds me of the Part 4 Jason for sure. Going further down, we have his pants. The belt is nicely detailed. We have the silver buckle on there. You have the belt loops, the brown belt. He has the classic NECA diaper thing going on, the soft rubber crotch part. That does have nice detail with the wrinkles and seams, and you got the pockets there on the side and on the butt. The pants themselves also continue on that wrinkled look. Not a whole lot of shading or weathering on this. I think there's just a very tiny bit that just gives the impression that they're real clothes. You know, nothing extreme like you would have on a more modern character where they'd be all bloody and dirty and stuff. And then of course the lower legs that I mentioned before have the cuff rolled up, so you can see a slightly different color there as they're rolled up, but then still some more of the same like wrinkly detail on there. There's not really a whole lot of difference in articulation between his different modes, but I'm going to switch through them anyway. So for the human head, he does have a ball joint at the base of the neck, so you can move up and down. It also rotates side to side at the top of the head and at the base of the neck, but it's more kind of at the base, it seems. You can get some additional pivot out of there. They do tend to pop off, which kind of sucks. You can look relatively far up, and I would say decently far down, but it is trying to pop off the peg there. But I do like that it is that kind of double joint in there. Keeping with the version-specific pieces, the hands will rotate and then hinge up and down. That's the same with all three human hands. The feet will rotate where they plug into the body. They will hinge pretty far down, decently far up, and you do get a pivot there at the ankle. Wolf head basically gets the same thing. Once again, does like to try to pop out, but you could look pretty far up, pretty far down, rotate side to side, pivot really well. Just pretty good range of articulation on this thing. I'm not complaining one bit on the head. The hands are pretty much the same. They will rotate and then hinge up and down. Once again, the feet will rotate. The ankle will go down. It will go much further up, and then you do get a pivot there as well. As for the shared stuff, the shoulders are pinned socket. They'll spin all the way around. They will go about slightly less than 90 degrees out to the side. They do come very far into the body, which I like. We have a single jointed hinge at the elbow that bends past 90 degrees, which is fantastic. We also can rotate freely there at the elbow. Mid-torso has a ball joint, so you can go side to side. You can go a little forward, a little back. As I mentioned before, you do reveal the kind of scrunch down section there when you go pretty far. But there's a decent range of motion. Not super articulated there, but I think it works as a balance with the character. The legs will kick pretty far forward, a little bit back, hindered by the butt. They will rotate at the upper leg, not a ton, but a decent amount. We have a single joint at the knee that bends about 90 degrees, which I like. You can also rotate at that knee joint, and then it's into the feet that we already talked about. For a height comparison, here he is next to a kind of normal-sized human figure. This is it's the movie Casey Jones figure, but I always want to call it Randy's self-insert character, because, I think he just tried to make an action figure of himself. You can see they're roughly the same height. And one thing I was thinking is I would almost love to make some kind of custom out of this figure. I don't know if they would fit together, but I would almost like to take the upper torso of this Casey Jones and put it onto another Wolfman body to have the initial transformation scene, because in that scene you really just see like his human upper body, then you see his feet transform, and he's kind of wearing like a wife beater, and then I would assume it's similar pants to what he has in this actual figure. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you could kit bash something out of this if you really wanted to. The only problem is you'd have to remove the neck from the Larry Talbot head, because Casey Jones here doesn't have a removable neck piece. And then here he is in Wolfman mode. I think he's a little bit taller. He also is on the stand because he kind of needs it to stand up, but he is still a little bit taller than he was basically as a human in this mode, kind of because he's standing on his tiptoes by default. And to compare him to some other lycanthropes, here he is next to our American Werewolf in London figures. And then here he is next to the Mezco remake Wolfman there on the left, and the Universal Select Diamond Select Wolfman there on the right. That's a second release Wolfman, the more articulated one. The first one was pretty limited, but yeah, I went back to my review of this Universal Select Wolfman earlier today just to kind of prep for this, and I remember being kind of cold on that figure, and now having this NECA one, I definitely feel like I have the way superior figure. He definitely blows that diamond one out of the water. This Mezco one though, even though the movie kind of sucked, I still kind of love this figure. It was like the Blockbuster exclusive bloody version. He's just kind of vicious looking. I really still dig it. And then I don't know where I put my mummy figure, so I can't throw him in here for a comparison. But I can throw in the NECA Frankenstein's monster, and definitely a good bit taller, which fits the character. I would definitely love to get a Frankenstein meets the Wolfman version of these later. Honestly, I really just want a Bride of Frankenstein. I can go off for hours on the stuff I want from this line. But yeah, it's cool that we could have these two meet up, at least even in their first incarnations. So I tried to get them into kind of that fighting scene from Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. I don't know, kind of looks like they're awkwardly dancing, but it was as close as I could get them right now. But yeah, I really like this figure. I think they did a great job on it. Honestly, all three of these Universal monsters they've done so far, I thought have been pretty darn good. Not good enough to make me run out and buy those Ninja Turtle abominations they're doing with them. But, you know, the main line I'm very happy to keep going with. I do plan on picking up those accessory sets for the Mummy and Frankenstein's monster. I definitely plan on picking up the Dracula, Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. And that's the point where I'm hoping it gets interesting, because obviously we've had all these figures, they've been coming out in color and black and white variants. I've just been opting for the color. And I think Dracula is also revealed to have an accessory set, which looks like it will be pretty cool on its own. Not just for stuff for these figures specifically, but just for general diorama building. I think these are really cool pieces. But I'm really hoping once they hit Bride, they've kind of gone through the main cycle of Universal horror, and I'm really hoping, I think I'm watching this Wolfman slowly fall out of Frankenstein's arms, but I'm really hoping that after that it's not a stopping point as much as it is a reason to go ahead and do some more lesser known characters or lesser seen versions of characters. They did show one version of the Invisible Man, but there are a few different versions even from the first movie you could do. I would love to have a Frankenstein's monster specifically from Bride of Frankenstein with that variation of the makeup and the beat up clothes and all that. I would love to see other versions of the Mummy. It would be cool to even see like John Carradine versions of Dracula, Glenn Strange versions of the Frankenstein monster, Bela Lugosi Igor figures, or Dwight Fry Hunchback assistants. Was it Fritz and I don't even remember the other one. I want to say it was like Hans or something. Hell, even Dr. Frankenstein himself, Dr. Pretorius, Van Helsing. Holy crap, could you imagine it? Like, I don't know why a Colin Clive Dr. Frankenstein figure and an Edward Van Sloan Van Helsing would be amazing. Not to mention that when they run out of Universal, we can move on to Hammer Horror. Just a Peter Cushing Van Helsing and a Christopher Lee Dracula would be amazing to have in this scale, especially if they matched up with their Universal counterparts so we could actually mix and match them together. There's so many possibilities, and I guess what I'm kind of getting at is I really hope that NECA doesn't just do kind of the same ones we've gotten for a long time and then dip out. You know, I do hope we end up getting a depth in this line that they have given us in other lines, like Freddy and Jason, Predator and Alien. I don't know if the sales are there to support it. I don't know if other people love Universal Monsters enough for it to be as big of a seller as some of their other stuff, but I really hope that does end up being the case so we could have a lot of cool shit. But yeah, if you haven't gotten it by now, I do recommend this figure. I would highly recommend picking it up. And with that said, I will talk to you next full moon. Later.